Okay, so now we are at the end of the Patterson book. We'll do the last few chapters here, chapters 12 through 16. This first PowerPoint will just be looking at chapters 12 and 13, and then parts 2 and 3 will look at the last 3 chapters. So last week we ended on talking about giving, receiving negative feedback and the different ways that we can receive negative feedback. And the best way is direct, assertive feedback, and Patterson calls this corrective feedback. And we talk about it being constructive and not critical. So not, again, not the personality assault, not the intent to be hurtful, but rather the intent to really help the person. And good leaders and managers can do this and can do it well. Giving negative feedback or corrective feedback is absolutely necessary in a leadership role. I'm sure many of you maybe have been in positions where the leaders were not strong and didn't approach people when there were problems or issues and just continued to let poor behavior continue. This is not good, obviously, for the workplace. And then also individuals aren't really living up to their potential. And so it's hard and uncomfortable, but it's necessary. And even if we're not the nurse manager or a leader on a floor, we still are going to have to give corrective feedback. That may be to our coworkers, sometimes even to a superior, a supervisor, to our patients. We're going to be giving corrective feedback. So it's important that we learn this skill and start to begin to feel a little bit more comfortable doing it. Unfortunately, sometimes when we're uncomfortable giving this type of corrective feedback, we resort to avoidance. One, we just don't do it, period, which I talked about. Next is aggression. We don't know how to do it well, and so it can just come off again as hurtful or mean. Or the third way, which is often I also see, is just vagueness. Somebody, maybe just says, we need to work on getting better about this. But not really providing any specifics. So the more specific you can be with your corrective feedback, the better. The really key takeaway here on giving corrective feedback is that we want to focus on the behavior, not the person. So again, this is people often, especially in the heat of the moment, they focus on the person. You're lazy, you're dumb, you are not competent, you don't care about your job. All of those attacks on people's personality or personal characteristics, we really just want to focus on the behavior because that's something that they can change. And it's also the behavior that is upsetting to you. It doesn't really matter why they're doing that behavior. It's the behavior itself. So somebody's showing up late to work. It doesn't matter why they're showing up late. The problem is that they're showing up late, period. So that's what we want to focus on, the behavior. Patterson provides some tips, some skills for providing this corrective feedback. First, we want to choose our timing. We want to do it at a time that both people have they're not rushing in between patients, maybe on a break. Also, when they're not really stressed or upset or hungry or tired. Want to choose a good time to talk to people. Also, watch the ratio. We want to be providing, Patterson says 4-to-1, four positive statements for every one corrective feedback. So we want to be telling our people and telling our coworkers and telling our friends 4 positive things about them for every one time we have to say, hey, this is a problem, can you work on it? We also want to think before talking. This is where rehearsing can help. Sometimes we just jump into it and that can come off as an attack. One-on-one is best, so you don't want to have an audience because that can make people feel uncomfortable. Framing the issue, giving some context for what you're talking about so people don't feel completely off guard can help. But also being precise is really important. So we don't want to go off on a 30-minute tangent. What is the problem? Be specific and precise on that. it also can be really helpful to include positive in the message. So start with something positive. You do a really great job with this, but one thing I've noticed is this behavior, and this is something that we need to work on. People are much more receptive when it comes off that way. The next chapter, so that is a big chapter. We didn't spend a lot of time on it, but it is a really important chapter in how to give that negative feedback. And there's several opportunities again in that chapter for you to practice. So I encourage you to take advantage of those practice opportunities and to reflect on yourself. How do you feel when you have to give negative feedback? What are your challenges? And do you think any of those tips that Patterson provides could help? The next chapter here is on the assertive no. This, again, is a really important skill that we all need to learn. And some of us, it's easier for some of us than others. But it can be difficult for people, especially people who are more passive, to say no. Also, people who are attracted to nursing are people who like to care for others and are very compassionate people, and they give a lot of themselves. And so that can cause us to sometimes overextend ourselves and say yes too often. So this chapter is really talking about being able to say no in an assertive way. The key takeaway here is that if you cannot say no, you're not in charge of your own life. And I know that sounds, pretty dramatic, pretty major, but if you think about it, it's very true. If we don't feel like we have the power or the ability to say no, then the people making requests of us are really those that have the power over our life and over our choices. So it's really important that we learn how to say no and begin to feel more comfortable doing so. Some of the barriers to saying no is that we don't think that they're going to accept it. If I say no, they're just going to make me end up doing it. They're going to make me do it anyway, so I might as well just say yes and not put up a fight. Even more so, I think, is this idea that they won't accept me. That in order to, have your friends, your family members, your coworkers accept you, they have to like you, and you have to always say yes to everything that they request of you. Those relationships are unhealthy, as we probably all know, but still it can be hard. We feel like they're not going to like us. We're not going to get the promotion. We're not going to get the job. And so we feel like we have to always say yes. And then also, some of us just don't feel like we have the right to say no. We feel like if we're raised in a household or a culture where we have to always say yes, it's disrespectful or rude or inappropriate to say no to somebody who asks us to do something, then we're going to have a problem with that. So I want you to reflect for yourself. Do you feel that that this happens to you, that people make requests of you? And again, this doesn't mean that we say no all the time. There are very reasonable requests people ask of us. We often want to help people out. It's great when we can say yes. What this chapter is talking about is when we want to say no, we feel it would be better and healthier for us to say no, but we say yes out of fear that people won't accept it or accept me. So think about these types of requests that people make to you. How do you usually respond, and why? Patterson gives us several strategies for saying no, and I think these are really helpful. There's several here. Using assertive body posture can really help. Talks about posture a few chapters ago. Also, deciding your position before you speak. If you start to say, I don't know, maybe, they're more likely to maybe pressure you to say yes. So if you know your answer is no, know that before you start speaking and stay firm on that. Also, wait for them to ask you. Sometimes somebody may say something and we interpret it as they want me to do that for them, and we volunteer before we're even asked. Wait for them to say, would you cover this shift for me? Could you take me to the airport? And then decide if you want to say yes or no. Don't apologize when it isn't necessary. Sometimes we really do feel bad that we can't help out. They we want to be able to help, but we're, pick up a shift, but we're busy that day or we have class. So it's okay to apologize, but don't apologize if you're not sorry and it's not necessary. We don't want to make excuses. Again, if it's not necessary, we can just say no. Also, this happens a lot. We don't need to ask permission to say no. Would it be okay if I said no because I have this going on? Or is it okay if I say no this time because I don't want to, or because I have something else going on? We don't need to ask permission. We are in charge of our own behavior and our own decisions. And so it's okay for us to say no. Broken record technique. Sometimes people will really put up a fight and they are very adamant that they want us to do this. And so we have to just keep repeating ourselves. No, I'm not able to. No, I'm sorry. Nope, I can't do that. That goes along with don't waiting for acceptance. It's okay if somebody's upset because you said no. They don't have to accept it. And so we have to be okay with that and recognize that we might not get them ever to accept our no. But then we also have to accept the consequences. So by saying no, that there may be negative consequences that we face to that. That's why we want to think through, is saying no the right thing to do, even in light of these potential consequences? If so, then we need to be able to say no. This chapter has an opportunity to practice on page 155 and 156, and I encourage you to do that with a partner. And then we're obviously not going to do this in the online course, but I want you guys to think about a situation where someone asked you to do something and you wanted to say no, but you didn't. You said yes instead. In that situation, what could you have done differently, and how could those tips from Patterson have helped you been able to say no in a more assertive way? So we are at the end of chapters 12 and 13. The next two PowerPoints will go over chapters 14 and 16. But here's what you should be working on this week. Read chapters 12 through 16, and then read the second two parts of this PowerPoint. You'll post to the discussion board in week 5, but no responses are required. So just do your initial post, and then you don't need to respond to your peers because you've got several other things due this week. Your leadership analysis paper will be due on Sunday, as well as your portfolio. If you have questions on either of those assignments, there's a lot of information in week 1 and 2 on what is the portfolio and what you're supposed to be handing in, and about the leadership analysis paper. But if you have more questions, feel free to email me. Then you will also need to complete the online exam. That will be, it opened this week, week 5, Monday at 8 a.m. So you can do that anytime this week, but it is due by Sunday at 11:55 p.m. And again, more information about that under week 4. And then also, just another plug, you'll be receiving, if you haven't already, the IDEA evaluation. It's sent to you by email. I'm sorry, that should say sent by email. You don't need to respond anything to me. You'll just fill it out. It's completely anonymous, but that feedback is really helpful for me. So I would really appreciate it if you took a few minutes to fill that out. Thank you.